welcome MP Alex Nuttall, MP for Barrie Springwater Oromodonte, to present to Council. Welcome, Alex. Good to see you again. I have a mic here that hopefully
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, members of council and members of staff and the public for having me here this evening. In the course of complete disclosure, if I mess anything up tonight, I'm recovering from a concussion here, so I apologize if I do. I've been a little bit scatterbrained for the last few days, and so hopefully I can stay on message and stuff here. Before I get into my presentation, Your Worship, members of council, I just wanted to say that it's been an honor to serve this community and to be part of the team, and to always feel like I've been part of the team here. And so I just wanted to say thank you to you and to members of council, both of this council and the previous council, for working so closely with me and accepting me into the community. As you know, I'm not from Springwater. I grew up in Barrie and live in Oromodonte, but always felt like this was a home when I was here. And so I just wanted to say thank you so much for that, because it is a place that will forever be special to me, and it's been a lot of fun over the last few years. So as I get into today's presentation, I just wanted to go over one of the very cool things that's been happening with Canada Summer Jobs. And this is a program that's across the country, but certainly it's here in Barrie Springwater Oromodonte. And I've always pushed very hard on this program because I believe in it a lot. I believe in investing in our youth, in the transfer of knowledge from our existing workforce to our young people, in giving our young people the opportunity to understand what they actually like and don't like in a job, and to be able to encourage your young people to follow their passion and don't just go find a job for a job's sake, but go find something you love and it won't feel like work a single day in your life. And how are you supposed to do that if you don't have any experience and you haven't had the opportunity to do that? So what the federal government does is they subsidize wages for young people in Canada. They have to be, until this year, they've had to be going back to university, college, or high school in the following year for that summer. And this year, it's been opened up, so basically it's under 30 years of age. And 900,000 young people, as you can see on the screen, have gone through this program since 2005. It started as a very small program, and it's expanded quite frequently, actually, under both Liberal and Conservative governments. And when I think about what it does for rural communities, I mean, the return on investment is huge, and I know that that's been the case here in Springwater. Oh. There we go. So, as I said, there's fewer barriers this year. There's an updated eligibility criteria, and I'm not going to be partisan tonight, but there was last year a change to Canada Summer Jobs, which included organizations having to fill out an attestation and what I call the values test, and that had a profound effect on the recipients. I know that I don't have to tell you guys the good work that a lot of the churches and the parishes and the mosques and the synagogues do in our community for young people whose families can't afford to put them in daycare or can't afford to put them in day camps during those summer months, and they missed out last year. The government realized they kind of overstepped, maybe missed what they were trying to achieve, and they've changed that for this year. And so you'll see a lot of that funding has actually been restored, and that includes just in Springwater, Willow Creek. They've offered camps every summer. In fact, I think I went to their camp when I was 7 years old, and they do it at a very low cost for those who can't afford the day camps, and so that's been restored for this year. The key dates, and this one was a little bit upside down, but I was in contact and communication with your municipality about this. Basically, the earliest job start date is April 23rd. They have to start by July 23rd, and it ends by September 1st because obviously the school year is starting. So this is something that I'm super proud of, because I worked with people on the other side of the aisle in the governing party to ensure that our community actually got more funding than pretty much anywhere else. If you compare Barrie Springwater Oro-Medonte to Barrie Innisfil, Barrie Innisfil used to, in 2016, got roughly the same amount within 50,000 of us. This year they received about 740,000 and we received $1,040,000. So there's $300,000 more being invested in our youth in Barrie Springwater Oro-Medonte because of the good people who work in our office, putting a lot of pressure on and making sure they understood how important this was to our community. And so the question is, like, what does that translate into and how does that feed into our local community? In 2016, we partially my office, partially the municipality, together we missed it and we didn't have any dollars being invested in Springwater Township. We were able to work with staff in 2017 and they were able to help us get $21,000 committed. 2018, $35,000. This year we've committed $108,000 to Springwater Township. That is not $108,000 to all of the entities in the township. That is just to the corporation of Springwater, right? Like, it's not, doesn't include all of the other entities. So for instance, Rounds Ranch receives quite a lot of funding. The Valley Farms receives funding. There's quite a number of organizations that will receive funding for Canada Summer Jobs. That's above and beyond this $108,000. Also, the library receives, I think it's two students this year, and that's also on top of this $108,000. So you can see the economic benefit that comes from having these young people out in the community, and hopefully we can get them into careers here. They go and learn, they're able to come back and invest that education that they've had outside of our area back into our area as well. So if there's any questions or concerns that come up, because there was a bit of an issue this year in that there was a lost form on the government side. They were able to help us through it, but it was a little bit late. And finally, it's been getting out in the last 2 weeks, all of the funding going out to the community. So if there are any questions or concerns that come up, that's a phone number and the email address that you can go through. And certainly our office will continue to help anyone who has questions regarding this program going forward. And with that, I just wanted to say thank you and answer any questions, Your Worship, that may come up from staff or from members' council.
Thank you very much, Alex. You've worked tirelessly to make this happen. As you say, the drastic increase from last year's 33,000 to get 108,000 for 32 jobs. And just to let people know that the areas that students, and these are high school as well as university students, many of them from Springwater, most of them from Springwater, will be inclusion facilitators, camp supervisors, camp counselors, public works co-op students, portable skateboard park assistants, recreation students, public work assistants, junior planning examiner, building assistants, bylaw enforcement students. So a great cross-section of training and experience. And we thank you so much for pushing for this. You were telling me there was a bit of a hiccup and it was a fraction of this money, but for the tireless work you put into it. And we thank you for your service for the 4 years. We're very thankful for what you did for us as a township. We're glad you're going to be closer to your family.
Me too.
And involved in an entrepreneurial exercise that's going to allow us to see more of you than less of you, which is great. So stop knocking yourself out and take care of yourself. So a round of applause. Let's get a picture if we could.
Your Worship, some people will do anything for a day's rest, and so I did what it took.
Somehow don't make you rest. Is there any way we can get one of all come up here, council? You get up there, big guy. Someone here. Here and here.
Ready?
Good. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, Alex, you're not feeling busy in the next few weeks from our business. Go easy. I'll just twist my neck today.
Next, we have the pleasure of hearing from our CEO of the library, Ms. Julie Delgado, on the spring order public library and
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to members of council. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to do my mid-year update a month early this year due to libraries being in the news recently. First off, I thought I would actually go through some of the initiatives we have planned at the library. You've heard of most of them already through the budget, and I wanted to update you on where they stand. Our master plan, we're really excited about this. We have never, ever done one for a Springwater Library before. It is currently out for RFP, which closes next week, and I know there has been quite a lot of interest. We will be hiring the consultant by the end of June. We're going to do the interviews the beginning of June. And then we're going out to question stakeholders, residents, interviews all the community members, and have the report by the year end, just in time for budget again. So I cannot wait to see what they say. It's sort of a report card on how the library's been doing, and I'm hoping we get a good grade on it. Our hotspots have been getting lots of interest and are going to prove to be super, super popular. We are actually the first library in the county to offer hotspots, and some of the other libraries have been asking me for information so they can implement this program. The hotspots are actually in already. We do have to insert the SIM cards and get them all set up, as well as get staff trained on how to use them and how to share the procedures with our patrons. We also are currently revising and updating our internet and computer usage policy, so it will include the hotspots. That will be passed by the board in June, and as soon as it is passed, we will be ready to go. So just in time for cottage season. We are going to be monitoring checkouts to see where the biggest use is in the township, but at the beginning, we are ordering the 6 hotspots for circulation use, with 2 in each branch. And with our interlibrary courier, so just within the township branches, not outside, just within Springwater, we can move them from branch to branch as needed. We also are going to have 1 hotspot for staff use, so when we go to the farmers market or Autumn Fest or kindergarten welcomes and outreach events, we will be able to use it then and sign people up for library cards and check their renew books and things like that, which we haven't been able to do before because of lack of Wi-Fi. So we're very excited about that. I'm also super excited about, I'm very excited about the library this week. Super excited about Georgian Bay Reads. We have our defender. It is Catherine Wallace, and she's going to be defending The Home for Unwanted Girls by Joanna Goodman, which has proven to be a very popular book. So we have a really, really good chance again this year. It's at the Elmville Community Center on Saturday, October 19th from 7 to 9 p.m. So it's going to be our launch event for Ontario Public Library Week this year. You will need a ticket. Tickets are free from any branch, and they'll be available around mid-September. I highly recommend that you come because we have often asked council to be our defenders. So if you're interested in it, you will need to see what it's about before I ask you next year. So just keep that in mind. It's lots of fun. Everybody laughs. It can, a little bit like Survivor, but with books. And the defenders vote each other off the island, if you will. So far this year, we have had some amazing programs. As always, we've partnered with the County of Simcoe for the It Starts initiative. We actually had the really big frames this year, and we had them at both Elmville and Midhurst branches. And a lot of the children especially like taking their picture with them, and then of course we put it on social media. We hosted our science fair for homeschoolers, and the McGuire room was full. We had a bunch of homeschoolers of all ages presenting their science projects, and they put a lot of hard work into them. World Puppy Day had over 100 people coming to pet puppies. So we're going to be doing some different versions of that through the summer at the Midhurst branch. We also have tax preparation programs, knitting. We really ramped up our senior programs this year. We have Senior Mondays about once a month in the Elmville branch, and different senior crafts, which has proven to be even more popular than we thought it would be. Home Alone and Babysitters courses, and I can't remember all of them. We have so much going on. We are also really well known for our March break programs. We have something going on every single day during March break at least one of the branches. And this year we were completely full with kids having fun. Our stunt ventriloquist at Menacing was super popular. He was really funny. I honestly do not know how he gets up and down on that unicycle, holding a puppet and talking at the same time. That is beyond my coordination. We also received funding last year from the Envelope Maple Syrup Committee to purchase tablets, which we have used for our science, technology, engineering, and math programs, so our STEM programs, and they've been working out really, really well with the new Lego robotics. If you want to see it, we actually have a program tomorrow at the Envelope branch after school with their Lego robotics, which is now full, so no more kids can join, unfortunately. And you've probably heard, but our Ladies Night Out fundraiser was super successful this year. We raised $11,000. The support from the community has been tremendous. We need to find a bigger place to hold it because we were sold out of tickets more than 2 weeks in advance for the first time ever. And we're going to be buying new conference tables for Elmville, because if you've ever had a meeting in Elmville, you know moving those conference tables every day, they're getting broke. So we're going to get rolly tables. We already have kitchen carts to put our coffee makers on to really help us become a true community hub in a third place. We're adding more to our parenting backpacks, which we started last year and have gotten a great response to. And we've had requests for more topics, so we're adding to those. And just lots of things that are the nice to haves that we couldn't fund otherwise. So that's what this money all goes to, and it really, really adds to the library experience and helps our patrons. For the library, you also need to have a professional and trained staff, and we really have been increasing our staff training. The Apple and Excel are both certificate programs that are put on through SOLS. I myself recently graduated with my Advanced Public Library Leadership Certificate from Apple. Amanda Mills is in the current cohort for that. Amanda also has recently received her Excel certificate in managing a small and rural library, and I have other staff members who are taking courses from that. American Library Association does a lot of e-learning, which is great because otherwise we couldn't participate. And I have 3 staff members who are just starting their sign language for libraries. So that with the changing demographics, that's going to be a really popular one, and then they're going to share what they've learned with us at staff meetings so we can all learn sign language for libraries. Just some general numbers. 2019 has started off really strong and has continued that way. We've had over 3,000 people participating in programming, which is 10% more than this time last year, and almost 34,000 people in the door, which is 31% more than last year, which I think is really impressive, especially considering the inclement weather we had in the winter, and we even had to close the library a couple times because it wasn't safe. Our ebooks are up, our Facebook and website visits are up. People are really beginning to use our digital offerings a lot more, so we're open more than our brick and mortar hours. And computer usage is also up. If you come into Elmville after school, you will not be able to get a computer. So that is good to see people in there using computers from games for the kids after school as a safe place for them to come, to people using it to fill out government forms, doing classes, and doing business. Now, you've all probably heard about libraries on the news or social media the last month. Libraries have actually been a big news item. I am going to start with the good news. We haven't had official confirmation, but everything is pointing to the fact that our public library operating grant is going to stay the same as last year. Although remember, that hasn't changed for 20 years, but so far we're still keeping it. However, SOLS and OLS North, which are the service partners to libraries, have had massive budget cuts. And for SOLS, they were forced to cut their interlibrary loan services effective April 26th. Our new materials were also delivered through this courier, and so we haven't had to pay shipping costs yet, but we are waiting to see if our shipping costs will increase. They were 0 under the SOLS courier, but now that they're being delivered by Purolator, we're playing a wait and see game because they might increase. For our own personal library interlibrary loan stats, The blue bar is what we borrowed from other libraries for our patron requests. The orange bar is what we lent out to other libraries that they needed. Our numbers have gone up every year, and even for 2019, for the almost 4 months that we had interlibrary loan, they were on track to increase. If we were to purchase all the books that we borrowed in 2018, those 1,645 books would cost us $43,822.80 based on the average hardcover fiction book price. Our entire collections budget, so that includes books, DVDs, ebooks, is $50,000. So that's a huge chunk out of our, if we had to pay for that ourselves, it would be a huge chunk out of our budget. I know they say we can replace this with Canada Post. Even using the Canada Post library rate to send out all the books we received and lent out last year, we were looking at probably about $4,000 with that postal rate. So I don't know what to say about that. Basically, having the courier made it very equitable for all libraries to participate in interlibrary loan. If it's up to the individual libraries to fund it themselves, you're going to find that some of the smaller and more rural libraries are not going to be able to participate, and they're the ones that actually need the service the most. We also use interlibrary loan to get the books for our book clubs. At the moment, we are managing to keep our adult book clubs going by borrowing the book club kits from the Simcoe County Library Cooperative. We are lucky enough that they're right around the corner. I was at a meeting today, I grabbed a book club kit, and I'm delivering it to the library tomorrow. So we are really lucky in our location that we're able to take advantage of that. Our mother-daughter club, because you can't get book club kits for children's books, is not going to be a go in September like we were originally planning. And we're still trying to figure out a way of supplying some of the community book clubs that we have supplied in the past to see if we can switch them over to the Simcoe County Club kits as well, or see what we can do for there. We did have one very upset child who has special needs, and he came in to read his series, which has over 60 books, so we obviously cannot keep them all in our branches. And when he found out we couldn't supply it, he was, "I hate the libraries," and stormed out. So we're hoping to switch him over to a similar series and see if he will go with that one. I haven't heard if he's been back in since then or not. The Simcoe County Chief Librarians meeting has discussed that, and we've sort of brainstormed some different solutions we can do moving forward. But as we're still waiting on information from SOLS and from the Ministry of Tourism, Culture, and Sport, we're in a holding pattern until we know more, and then we'll be able to move forward and see if any of our brainstorming solutions will be needed. It's also been spoken that in today's libraries, everything is digital, and we're definitely going towards a digital content. But libraries still are having this issue with digital content, and this has gone on since the beginning of ebooks, that publishers don't always want to supply the libraries. They're worried about losing money. And so as you can see, that's just one of the more extreme examples. But if you buy an ebook from Amazon for your Kobo, you're just paying the straight price. When a library buys an ebook or an e-audiobook, they have licensing fees, and it drives the price up. Sometimes our books are licensed only for 2 years. Sometimes they're licensed for a certain number of checkouts, and once it reaches those limits, the book will disappear from our system. Other times, for example, for audiobooks, Audacity licenses a lot of audiobooks solely for them, but that's only for consumer use, and they won't work with libraries. So some of the books on the Audacity program, on their platform, libraries can't even access to give to our patrons. So librarian representatives have been talking with publishers. This has been an ongoing problem. It sort of goes up and down with the publishers since the beginning of these digital formats. I'm hoping we will come to a resolution, and we'll be able to make more digital content available. So even though we've had lots of challenges so far this year, we've also had lots of great things happen. We have even more great programs. Our summer reading program is going to be great because we do have the 2 summer students who are returning. We have lots of great crafts and art programs coming up. Our seniors program is really taking off. And one thing we have realized through this is that the support from the community has been amazing. It's been really heartening that people are coming in. The support for the fundraisers, the support if we need supplies for programs, the support for us with the budget cuts. It's been really wonderful to see Springwater residents rally out for the libraries, and so we can only go onward and upward from here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jody. Open it up for council discussion, questions? Councilor Brown.
Thank you. Just getting back to the souls, not
Mhm.
to deliver, you mentioned Pure later, and it sounded like you weren't sure where the money was going to come from. Is that how they're delivering the books now, and they're still looking after paying for it?
Through you, Mr. Your Worship, we're using Purelator now to get our new book deliveries. They used to come on the Souls Courier in big reusable tubs. So that was also better for the environment because each week we'd send the empty tub back, get a new tub. And now we're getting them through Purelator, I believe. I'm not sure exactly which courier it is. So we have not had to pay the price for that yet. Our supplier is still paying for that. But if the price goes up, because now they have to buy shipping material, now they have to actually pay Purelator probably more than they were paying their agreement with Souls. I don't know the ins and outs of that. So we're monitoring it to see if we are going to have to start paying shipping on top of our new book purchases.
Okay, thank you very much. May I have a mover and second to receive the...
Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Deputy Mayor Coughlin. The delegation for Jody was done out. We received all those in favor. Carried. Thank you. Next, we have Becky Breeden from the County of Simcoe to talk regarding the Simcoe Ray and Bruce Agriculture and Agriculture Study. We're pleased as well to have joining her, Director of Planning, Development, and Tourism, Mr. David Park. Welcome both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Good
so
evening.
much, Your Worship, for having us and council. The worship has asked me to talk a little bit slower than I normally do, so if I talk too fast, please let me know. I've been asked to come in today to talk about the regional agricultural study project that we did and what exactly it is. We've had a lot of questions about it, why we did it, and so I'm just going to give you guys a brief summary. Just to let you know, this presentation has been cut down from a 2-hour-long presentation, so if I skip over anything or I go a little too fast, let me know and I can fill in the blanks. What basically happened was, in 2014, the counties of Grey, Bruce, Simcoe, Barrie, Orillia, Georgian College, and our business support agencies got together and basically realized that we should share resources to help promote agriculture and agri-food and training. Between 2014 and 2017, we put 800 food entrepreneurs through some type of training. This could be the same one going to every type of training, but we had 800 different participants. In 2017, we started to notice our numbers were dropping, so events that we would usually have 50 or 60 people out, we were only having 20, and we just didn't know why. We had a lot of anecdotal reasons. You know, we'd met training needs, we're too big now for entrepreneurship or the next stage, but we really didn't have any solid information. So we realized we needed to go out to the businesses and find out where we were missing the information, how we could actually help the sector grow, expand. So what we decided to do was undertake a business retention and expansion study. And what a business retention and expansion study is basically it's a formalized survey that we do. We go out, we ask businesses all the same questions, and we try to figure out what the trends, what the opportunities, what the challenges are in the sector, and then we take the overall information and try to develop next steps to help the sector. So with the BRNE that we undertook, it was 40 pages long, and it took between an hour and a half to 3 hours to complete. So our agricultural producers to complete. We did every interview one-on-one with them. So we did 270 interviews throughout the whole entire region. 132 of those were done in Simcoe County alone. Our office, majority of me, attended every single interview. And we ended up following up with every business afterwards with any personal issues that they had going on, trying to help them. So we would connect them to someone like in your planning department, or we would connect them with our planning department, depending on an issue, if that was a personal issue they had. But then we also inputted all their data into a computer program. I'm just going to show you guys a quick breakdown of what we did. Before we actually started the survey, we looked at the whole entire value chain. We realized that we couldn't just talk to farmers, we couldn't just talk to agri-food processors, we needed to talk to the whole entire value chain. That from the person that sells seeds all the way to the restaurant or the retailer that sells a product, and basically find out what the whole entire value chain, what issues were that were happening in the area. We went through and used StatsCan to figure out exactly how many of each sector was in Simcoe County. So we went through and went through the region. So we found that 60% of the value chain were farmers in the region. So therefore we needed to interview 60% of our respondents had to be farmers to make sure that the answers we got and the trends that we were doing matched what was going on in the sector and the whole value chain. So that's just a quick breakdown of what the surveys we did. And just to let you know, also, a lot of the people also we did several factors or had several different businesses related to agriculture. So we may have interviewed a farmer who also had a catering business, or we may have interviewed a veterinarian who also made organic dog food. So we did the whole entire gamut. And then but a person was registered in our books as their primary thing. So we asked their primary job. We asked them what was their primary revenue generator, and that's how we recorded them in the system. So we had over 800,000 results and data points by the time we were done the survey. On my desk in my office is a binder about yay big full of just pure data. We took that and put that into a 40-page report, which I believe is attached to your agenda tonight. And I just thought I'd do a brief overview of some of the information for you guys. 63% of the participants had been in business for over 10 years. 35% of our participants had been in business for over 25 years. 88% of our businesses said that their market was local and regional, and in this case we used regional as Ontario. 55% of the owners had been running the business for over 10 years, so that includes, we talked to a number of businesses that were generational, but the current owner had been there for at least 10 years, and 69% of our businesses actually own their facilities or property. 83% of our respondents actually said that their local municipality, so their local lower tier, they had a good or overall excellent impression of the community. They wanted to be there, they loved their community, they were very proud of their community. Business owners were very positive about the area, especially Simcoe County. We had nothing but positive things. People were talking about how they moved here for a reason and they loved the lifestyle. 58% of participants, we asked them if their industry was growing, and 58% said, yep, the industry's growing, our subsector's growing, there is a future in our business. Businesses were asked to identify why they chose the location where they were. Of course, a lot of farmers said generational, we've been here, but those who weren't, they identified that the location, the proximity to the GTA, cottage country, quality of life, lower costs of doing business, land quality, and just the opportunity to grow in the area was why they were here. We also asked them what their hurdles were. That was a really good, interesting conversation. The biggest one was the cost of electricity, followed by internet service or lack thereof. The inability to find housing for themselves or for their staff, and municipal property taxes. Respondents were also asked about services that municipalities provide, so different services. Garbage and recycling received high numbers. Snow removal, fire, police, and recreational services for the whole entire county received great reviews. What participants wanted to see improvements in were planning, public transportation, and the building permit process. I will let you guys know, we had to explain a lot during the surveys that the building permit process is more of a provincial thing, and we are just unfortunately the doers. Businesses were also doing the survey, were also looking for new and emerging markets. And the one that we were really excited to see was that 53% of everybody that was interviewed said that their business was growing, or they were looking to grow their business within the next 18 months. The only issue that we had is out of those 53%, 58% of them said that they were experiencing an issue with their expansion. The biggest issue that they were experiencing was lack of labor. They couldn't find people to fill the position to grow. The next one was regulatory barriers, followed by lack of infrastructure and just lack of capital. There isn't funding out there for farming like there is for other entrepreneurship opportunities. Participants were also asked about their labor issues. 41% of the participants said they had expanded their labor force, but they also noted that they were having issues finding skilled and unskilled labor. Retailers and restaurants were the highest number for difficulty with finding help, but what we ended up finding is that once they actually got somebody into their business, they didn't have an issue keeping them. People said retention was not an issue. They did not have retention issues. The only people that had retention issues were seasonality businesses like restaurants or retailers where they were only open for, say, a harvest or the summer. They were the ones having the most issue. And then 81% of our agri-food processors noted that they had bought new equipment or had expanded within the last 2 years. But most of them also noted that they were almost at capacity, so there is expansion opportunities there. I went through and looked at your guys before the presentation. I looked at Springwater's demographics, and majority is farming in this area. So I pulled off some statistics that you guys may find interesting for farming. Primary producers were asked a number of questions, and the major issue that kept coming up during the surveys was about the lack of abattoirs. That's the major issue for them expanding or growing their business. We found that 48% of our primary producers who were interviewed were trying or were selling meat directly to the consumer, but they had to drive over 100 kilometers to reach an abattoir one way, and 36% of them had to book at least 6 months in advance to get into an abattoir. So they were booking, as one chicken farmer told me, the egg's mother hasn't been born yet before he has to book that chicken into the abattoir. So he has no idea what he's getting, but he's having to book into the abattoir. Our primary producers were basically asked what did they want to see happen in the area. They were given a list from everything to, expansion of farmers markets, food hubs, everything, and overwhelming, they want abattoirs. That was their main issue. Even farmers who were doing produce were still supporting the abattoir because they can expand. And the other interesting thing is that 77% of the farmers who were interviewed were doing some type of processing of their product before they sold it. So that's either bagging, that could be cooking the product. They were putting some value add into the product. So what ended up happening is after we ended up going through all of the surveys, we hired an independent third-party consultant to look at all of the 800,000 data points and come up with kind of a trends report for us to basically see where the issues were. Based on that trends report, the region got together and we started working on a work plan. And we started to notice while we were doing the work plan that there were issues that some were regional and then some were more local issues. So during the surveys when we were looking, I'll give a good example. Bruce County was noticing that they wanted to do a resident attraction program. For us in Simcoe County, as we know, our numbers are growing exponentially. That's not something that we can do or we wanted to support. So what we decided to do was to do a regional plan that would be the 3 counties and the 2 cities, and then also do county plans that would work. So in your agenda, you guys will have a copy of the regional plan, and you'll also have a copy of the county plan. And what I've done is I've just there's a list on here of some of the projects we hope to complete within the next 18 months. The projects that we have are about 5 years or plus, some of our initiatives, but some of the ones we're hoping to take within the next 18 months. So The first ones are, we're gonna start doing more workshops related to issues that the farmers and the agri-food processors identified during the surveys. We completed about 2 weeks ago our first workshop. It was selling to restaurants, so we had two restaurants and a farmer talk about how to sell directly to restaurants locally. We had 51 people come out for the event. We're also going to start working more with the succession planning pilot project that we have and getting more farmers into succession planning. Only 6.4% of our farmers in Simcoe County have a succession plan. So our hope is to get more of them either doing succession plans for the future with their family or looking for future, understanding that they need a succession plan to actually sell their business. We also have on the county website a list of kitchens that are available for rent that are certified by the health unit. We've now updated that list and we will be continuing to promote it and update it. It's on the economic development website. And we're also working regionally on an ag-related resource directory. We're not sure at this point what it's going to look like, but it's going to be some type of online directory where if you have a question related to ag, who do I contact? Who's the person? Unfortunately, the Food Starter in Toronto has closed, and that was a resource that many of our farmers and food entrepreneurs use. So we're hoping to be able to build something not as great as that they had, but at least have something there to answer questions and provide resources. We're also going to work on municipal issues. So one of the issues we hope to work on is the reviewing of farm signage at the county level so that farmers can put out temporary signage. That's an issue we have right now. They get pulled. Is there some way we could come up with a better relationship for that? The Agricultural Liaison Committee, which your worship you sit on, is reviewing 911 signage for agricultural property. And another thing that we're looking at is through the county's official plan is coming up with standardized language for zoning and official policies related to agriculture and agri-food processing, so that if you are in Springwater or you are in Oro-Medonte, the language is very similar, so we can help businesses expand. As we know, businesses don't see borders, so if somebody needs to move to another municipality, hopefully they can do the transition smoothly. Other initiatives that we're undertaking related to agritourism will be the development of more agritourism workshops to help farmers understand how to do on-farm agritourism. You just can't open your farm. You need, health unit inspections, proper facilities for visitors. The Saints and Sinners Trail, which is an alcohol trail. If you haven't heard of it, it's quite fun. It's a trail where you can go and visit all of our local breweries, wineries, etc. The trail is looking to add on businesses that support local alcohol onto the trail. The Barn Quilt Trail, which is expanding, there'll be 150 quilts up on our local barns by the end of this year. And we're also going to be expanding the agri-tourism map and social media platform we have. Through other initiatives that we're looking at is SWIFT, which is hopefully expanding internet into this area. We hope to advocate more for Phase 3 hydro. We spoke to a number of on-farm businesses that cannot expand because they don't have Phase 3 hydro. They can't put the mill on, and the price to get the 3-phase hydro it's more than the mill to build. So they can't do that. Also, natural gas is a major issue to be able to expand to year-round production for some of our greenhouses. Also making sure a number of farmers were very worried about road maintenance and upgrades, and making sure that we don't put things like raised curves in, etc., to affect farm equipment. And our last grouping of activities we're going to be undertaking is a lot of the farmers and agri-food processors that we met with didn't know about the programs that the schools run related to co-op and the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program. So we'd like to promote that more and tell them that they can get these people in, these youth in at 15, 16 and be able to keep them for their whole career. We're going to continue to advocate for the Foreign Workers Program. A number of farmers use that program. They have to. Nobody wants to work locally picking, beans. So, but the federal government makes it harder every year to do that program. And the other thing that we're also looking for is how can we as a region promote careers in agriculture and in hospitality more as an actual career in the future, not just a job right now. So those are some of the initiatives we're gonna undertake for the next 18 months. There's a number in your agenda. There are other initiatives that we'll be undertaking, but over the longer term. So I just have to put this slide up to make the provincial government happy. They provided us funding. The total project, just if you're wondering, cost was $51,000, the project cost for the 3 counties. We put in probably over $80,000 worth of in-kind. The county of Simcoe alone did. And the other municipalities put in probably about 50 themselves each. And thank you guys.
Well, that was very kind of your in kind. Good summation. Thank you very much, Becky. So, discussion, Councilor Ritchie.
Thank you for coming. That's a great presentation. What spurred you to do all this work?
Well, through yourself, through you, your worship. Do you mean the county, why we overall decided to do the work? Agriculture is a major sector in here. It's also a sector that hasn't in the Simcoe County. The last update that the local federation did on what the state of agriculture looks like in Simcoe County was 1999. So we realized we needed to go out and really look at agriculture and try to figure out what is going on in the sector. They are our largest landowners in Simcoe County, so how can we better support them?
I'd just like to comment. I'm a farmer myself, and just a little one compared to the rest of them. But some of the things you mentioned there, one thing I'd like to maybe mention is if you reached out to the financing industry, Farm Credit, all the banks, they all have agrologists, capital, succession planning. All of them have programs. I know Farm Credit has some pretty tailor-made programs there for that. And to reach out to and offer all the work that you've done and the information you've gathered to them, the Ministry of Agriculture and Food on the federal level, and see what you can do to pull that together and maybe design some programs, more funding available out of that, because obviously you've spent a lot of time and money on that. And it'd be nice to see how far, what kind of traction you could get out of that by bringing all those parties in, because you're right, agriculture is a huge industry in our in the county of Simcoe. But just want to mention that. Thank you.
Through your worship, just the Farm Credit, they were actually involved. They were actually one of, it was funny, they actually asked us if we wanted money. we were halfway through the program, and I was like, no, I want your money to do a program later on. So they are actually involved. They enjoyed the information, and they really want to get involved, and they're actually working with some of our local community development corporations to do and with the local Federation of Agriculture to do more succession planning events.
And again, they have programs, but so do the lending institutions, and giving them that information helps them to tailor-make programs better suited for different sectors of the agricultural economy here in the county. But all that work, great work done. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
What they call slaughter pigs are grown in Simcoe County every year, but through doing the BRNE, I can tell you that 30,000 of those go to Maple Leaf every year. I only know that. So we can't, and that's the anecdotal information we need to know before we can actually figure out where and what type of abattoir we need. So the provincial government and the federal government have changed regulations, so poultry can't be mixed with certain red meats, and they're making it even harder. So we need to figure out what is actually needed in this region, because again, we have statistics on chickens. I forget the exact number, but every farmer I pretty much interviewed is taking their chicken directly to Maple Leaf or to Saratola Meats, which is now Maple Leaf. So how many chickens are actually in the area? Do we need an abattoir that's 10,000 square feet, or do we need a gigantic one that's 100,000 square feet? We need to figure that one out. The other thing that we're looking at is for the phase 3 hydro is some of the and natural gas municipalities like Oro-Medonte have started to take the lead on the natural gas themselves, and they're trying to map out where it should actually be, where would it make cost be the best way, and then they're hoping to go and pitch that to groups like Union Gas. So there are opportunities.
Let me add too, like, one of the things when we were working with, looking where the slaughterhouses could go, is the acceptance of the local municipality, because, it's important to the industry, but, when you look at the zoning bylaws of municipalities, they don't permit them, and of course, the challenges that you can run into if you go to a public meeting and suggest that. Again, it's, we gotta be careful how we tread, because as much as we support agriculture, when you put a dot on the map for the industry, it can be a challenge. And I think one of the things that all business owners always face is business certainty, right? How much do you invest if, there's gonna be a lot of local opposition, and at the end of the day, it doesn't happen. So those are concerns of the business operators that may wanna come forward. They're saying, well, where can we go and how can we get that certainty? And just like any business.
Do you find that the existing abattoir businesses are interested in expanding, or is it a dying breed, or the barriers to entry just too great?
So right now we have 4 abattoirs in Simcoe County. A few years ago we had over a dozen.
Mm-hmm.
We have 1 federal and 3 provincial. The ones that we do, 3 of them that we have now are non-conforming use. So if they close down tomorrow or try to expand, they will not be allowed to because of where they're located. They are now surrounded by subdivisions. The one that is still provincial, they're aging out and they don't have anyone to take over. We haven't trying to get an interview with them has almost been impossible because they are so backlogged and they have so few staff. But that's a real issue, is there's no one that wants to take over. They have a hard time getting staff. It's not sexy. I've been in one. It's not what you want to tell everybody you do every day. And just basically the non-conforming use that they're going through. They were out in the middle of nowhere when they were built, and now they're completely surrounded by subdivisions. Mm-hmm. And I will let you guys know that Springwater, so far in the surveys that we've done, you guys are one of the only communities so far out of the 9 I've got back that support agriculture, that are supporting an abattoir. Have a zoning in there that actually has the word abattoir in it.
Councillor Cabral. Through you, Mary Allen, this is more of a comment, but I used to keep the odd head of cattle. I kept chickens. A lot of farmers did. You were allowed to keep so many without actually, having to get a quota or anything. And all of the places that I used to be, just in Elmville there used to be 4 abattoirs within the last 20 years. And now there's only 1. And those 4 were within about 25 minutes of my location. And the place where everybody I knew used to take their chickens to closed down a number of years ago, and there's just no viable place for even small farmers who just have a handful of cattle or want to do a few custom orders to go to. So I think it's really important that we get an opportunity to bring something like that back again.
The nearest chicken poultry place at this current time is Sprucedale in the Muskokas. So Sprucedale in the Muskokas. People are driving up to Sprucedale, and that my understanding is that Stainer, there is one in Durham but they're no longer taking anything under 100 unless you bring in over 100 at a time. Oh,
Councillor Ritchie?
Are you talking chickens?
yes.
There's one in Omimi, which is over near Lindsay.
Okay.
Because there was one over near Coldwater, but because of past governments and a lot of red tape, put them out of business. So, and it's over near Omimi.
Yeah, the chicken man in Severn Township. Yeah, I was there when we was having the issues there.
You talked about regulatory barriers. How much is the provincial government paying attention to the agricultural issues, and what are the regulatory barriers that you came across?
There are 17 governing bodies or legislative, provincial legislative laws that affect a farmer every day. And if they live near like Lake Simcoe, they have even more. We talked to one farmer who was telling me like between, he has to have something for his manure. So he has to have, and I forget the exact, the solid waste.
A nutrient plan.
Nutrient plant, I had to think what it is. Conservation Authority rules and everything else. He told me he has 17 bodies that he reports to throughout the year. And the OFA does a wonderful job of trying to explain that to the province, and I think with changes that have come through the reducing of red tape, hopefully it will get better, but we do have a long way to go. Sometimes it's duplication, so you may have to submit a report. I'm thinking from personal experience, when we did our nutrient management plan, and then you have to submit it, and then you have to submit it again, and you have to submit it again to another body, it takes a lot of time, and it's just a lot of paperwork.
But we're seeing this provincial government willing to pay attention and focus on the issues.
They've started to reduce some of the smaller ones, some of the smaller rules related to on-farm diversification. It seems to be getting better. Some of the rules related to nutrient management, some of the conservation rules seem to be getting a little, they're not being relaxed, they're just seeing the amount of paperwork is being removed on the farmer.
Last agriculture conference I went to, mental health and stress management seems to be a big topic. Did you run across that?
The older farmers we interviewed, no. You know, it's tough it out. But a lot of the younger farmers, it was interesting. They aren't afraid to share as much as the older farmer was. The older farmer, if you'd ask a question, you know, that's personal, that's fine. The younger farmers are more willing to talk, and I think there are great support systems like the Junior Farmers Association where people have an opportunity, but it's a big issue in Simcoe County, and we do have resources, and I think it is going to be an issue in the future to make sure we do let those resources be known. I know that the local Federation of Agriculture, that was why that was at that conference, was to basically say, don't be afraid to share when you have an issue. It's lonely. I've grown up and I've been on a tractor for 20 hours straight. You go a little crazy.
Okay, any other questions or points? That was very worthwhile. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I have a mover and a seconder that the delegation from Becky Breeden and David Parks of the County of Simcoe be received? Councillor Chapman, Councillor Moore, all those in favor? Carried. Thanks again. Okay, question period. Are there any questions from the audience? All right, there doesn't seem to be any questions. I'll ask them later. Okay, moving on to 6.1, minutes review. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the approval of the minutes? Deputy Mayor Coughlin and Councillor Hanna. That the minutes of council listed herein be approved as presented. That's the minutes of the regular meeting council April 17, minutes of special meeting of council April 29th, minutes of special meeting of council closed session April 29th, minutes of special meeting of council April 29th, and the minutes of the regular meeting of council May 1. Any questions or discussions with respect to these? Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor. Just comments about the regular council meeting of May the 1st. Just if you go to 4.1 on May the 1st, if the clerk could bring that up, the delegation by Bill French. In there, it doesn't mention anything about the preamble that was read into the official public meeting, if you like, about the letter from the lawyer, the legal firm that was hired by the Compliance Audit Committee, and the comments that were in that letter. I'd just like to point out, in an effort to be transparent, which we always try to be, but to be consistent and accurate, in that letter there are statements made that were not consistent with what took place in the courtroom. The transcript is different than what was in that letter, and I would just bring that to the attention of the council in case there's an effort or there's a desire to be accurate, we would have to adjust what was stated there. And I think that it's pretty important that those comments were made, but they're not reflected in the minutes of this reporting of the meeting from May the 1st. Just one other observation I'd also make is that at that meeting, Mr. French made a request that the letter from his lawyer also be included in the agendas as correspondence, and we haven't done so. And I realized that there was a email forwarded today stating that there was no direction, which is accurate, there was no direction given by council to staff to include that, and that's accurate. However, we were not permitted to ask questions or make comments, so therefore we were unable to provide direction to staff to make sure that was included. And again, I'm just pointing this all out in an effort to be just, if you like, or to provide a balanced policy for this council. If we choose to do so, we can make the changes. If not, I just make sure I wanted to bring it forward.
Thank you. CEO Brindley, do you want to just comment or on the on this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through to Councillor Hanna. Yeah, Mr. French appeared here as a delegation and provided information. I would say that if it's the intent of this council to have Mr. French's lawyer's letter on the file, Councillor Hanna, you yourself had, said, clearly that that lawyer's letter would be from the lawyer from the compliance committee. I would argue that if that's the case where we would put the letter from Mr. French's lawyer, I would argue that our lawyer would then respond to that letter first before, once again, in fairness, there would be another response by our lawyer who did work on that file, Mr. Elston, would then reply to that. To me, it's still going back and forth, and is it really the intent of this council to deal with that? Or the court hearing was heard, evidence was given, a decision was made. Is that enough? So that, I would offer that.
Councillor Hanna, follow up.
Thank you. Just in response, just so for clarification, the letter that was read from Mr. Fleming was the lawyer who represented the Compliance Audit Committee. He was not a township lawyer representing this township or this council. It was the Compliance Audit Committee's lawyer. And I'm just suggesting that if we want to provide balanced policy as a township or as a council, then Mr. French's lawyer should also be allowed to have his lawyer included in correspondence received. That's the analogy I'm trying to make. I understand what you're saying, and there was no direction. French asked to have his letter included. If council wants to include it, great. If not, I just, again, figure it's my responsibility to bring it forward so we're not seen as a biased council.
Any other, Councillor Cabral?
Through you, Mayor Allen. I guess from my standpoint here is that key word there, bias and transparency, speak volumes. And I think as part of the delegation, that letter did come out. And I think had it been a normal delegation and the letter had it been presented, we may very well have likely received it and just kept it on file. And I don't think there's anything wrong with us doing that.
CEO Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and seeing the comments from council, as I mentioned, is that in all fairness, then I would advise council that if that's the move of this council, then I would suggest that, I would advise council that our lawyer would then review that letter and provide an opinion. Our lawyer that actually sat on this case.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And just for clarification, myself, I don't feel that this council wasn't permitted to make comment. I do believe that as a team, we came to a decision on how the discourse would be handled throughout the evening. I was not muzzled. It was a decision that I think we made as a team together. And secondly, when it comes to anecdotal notes, is that common practice in the clerk's department, or are anecdotal notes not included in most or all agendas? Through you to the clerk.
Clerk Shepro?
Thank you. Yes, minutes of council are to be without note or comment. Very basic information, as you can tell from previous minutes, are provided within the minutes, but minutes are generally for the decisions of council solely.
Follow-up?
Thank you. So it's fair to say that nothing was biased or excluded. It's common practice of our council not to include any anecdotal notes. So it's not that we chose at that time to keep something out deliberately.
Follow-up?
Thank you, through you. And not just the practice of this council, that's a practice across Ontario.
Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor Allen, I agree with with CO Brinley. They came, they made a presentation, it's done, it's over with. Let's move on here. I don't think there's no end to this here. If we keep, our lawyer, their lawyer, it's over with and it's done. Let's move on here and leave it at that. And I don't support getting another lawyer for all this. It's over with, it's done. And I hope the rest of council supports me with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Moore?
Oh, yes, I am. Through you, Mayor Allen, to CAO Brinley. In the email you sent out today, I just want to be clear, you've asked that there was, or what you've said is there was no direction from council to do so, reflecting the letter being included in the public record. Were we given an opportunity to discuss whether it should be or not? I don't remember having that discussion, and I don't want it to appear as though I've been a part of something if I haven't been. That's all. Thank you.
We had discussed, as Deputy Mayor Coghlan said, as a council, about entering into debate or having questions, and we agreed as a council that that would not happen. So I reiterate the fact that that's not any one person's desire, it was the desire of council. So it could have been possible for any councillor to make a motion to have included that, but that motion did not come forward. Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you, with apologies, the question was directed to CO Brinley.
CEO Brinley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to council. And just for the benefit of the public, it was a simple email where Mr. French had requested that his lawyer's letter be put on an agenda, and it was essentially probably a two-sentence letter, essentially highlighting the fact that I did recognize that part of his presentation did request that his lawyer's letter be put on the agenda, but I also mentioned that we did not have any direction, staff did not have any direction to put that letter on the agenda. That said, although council had looked at the fact that they didn't want to deliberate in public on this issue or debate, from a procedural standpoint, there was never anything that prevented council to direct staff to put that on the public record at that time.
Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you, I think to me, when we have EDHS High School come forward and they do a delegation on a trip that they want to take, the resolution might read that we received the delegation, but then council can amend it to, we receive the delegation and support $1,000 to whichever. So had the resolution said we receive the delegation at the time, the opportunity would have been for the council to say or provide an amendment to the motion to then provide direction to staff and that the correspondence be included at the next meeting. So the opportunity was there. It wasn't, we did not vote on anything from that. So we did have the opportunity to do so, I guess, but if there's any members of council who want to see that happen, there's always the opportunity through notice of motion, I guess.
That is true. Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So what I don't want to see is a continuation. I don't want to see another lawyer's letter being responded to by another lawyer's letter. I really don't want to see that. I don't want to have to answer to that. And I don't think it's necessary. I really was on the fence about the fairness piece only, and that if we do allow some legal reports to be in the public record, then we should allow them all to be. So that was my perspective, regardless of content and maybe insinuation within. It really is just a fairness piece for me. And I didn't have, when the email came out today, it specifically said that we as a council had not responded to that letter, which, if you want to include that in all the letters, you're correct. But for me, it's just about being fair. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, and as a final statement myself, I will say that I'm past council and this council, we have remained at arm's length, and we have, aside from the one delegation in this chamber, I believe that we have remained unbiased. And I think that if we're going to continue to do so, I agree that there should not be comment, there should not be persuasion, and the event that took place, and that was a decision of council as to how it was going to happen. So in my opinion, at this point, if we are going to remain unbiased and neutral throughout the proceedings, that we need to stay away from it. That's my opinion.
Councillor Hannah?
Thank you. As I pointed out, my objective was just to make sure council was aware of what had happened. I don't agree we've been unbiased, because I think when it came into the chamber and there was comments made at one of our council meetings that took place during our municipal updates, I think that's when we stopped being seen as being neutral and unbiased. But that's the public's opinion and the opinion of some other people as well. But the bottom line is, I wanted to bring this to council's attention, because I just think that this was something that we should have done, and that was to include both lawyers' letters. We didn't get legal advice before we included the letter from the compliance audits lawyer. And again, I'm just pointing out that there's stuff in that letter that's not consistent with the transcript that took place in court. Anyway, I feel comfortable that I brought this to everybody's attention, and I'm happy to let it go at that.
Okay, so therefore, we are looking at approving the minutes that I read off, 1 to 5 at 6.1. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to the minutes of the special meeting of council. Committees and organizations. Mover and a seconder for those, please. Councillor Moore and Councillor Chapman. The minutes of boards, committees, and other organizations listed herein be received as information. The minutes of the Recreation Advisory Committee, Feb. 28, 2019. The minutes of the Midhurst Community Recreation Association, March 18, 2019. The minutes of the Recreation Advisory Committee, March 26, 2019. And the minutes of the Cultural Activities Advisory Committee, April 2nd, 2019. Any comments or questions with respect to these? All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Correspondence items 7. Correspondence items 1 through 5. Any of those questions or to be pulled? Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Can we pull number 5, please?
Number 5, okay. Any questions or discussions about 1 through 4? Okay, we won't pull it, but if you'd like to make comment on it, please.
I wanted to ask a question.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Allen, sorry, to Director Spagnol. I was wondering what your impressions were about the letter and what changes you think would be coming to the township as far as housing and potentially opening up the areas that haven't been available to developers in our area that possibly could be in the future.
Director Spagnol?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Councillor Moore. That's a tough question. The reason why that's a tough question is because there are so many changes and I would say revisions moving away from what was originally approved in 2017 by the previous government. It's tough for staff to anticipate whether or not the policies included within the growth plan and any of the changes included with the Planning Act will have the impact or effect to provide for more housing or provide some of the objectives that are listed within the letter. One thing that I can say about it is that it's definitely something that we will need to look at through the township's official plan review process and growth management strategy. What I think that the changes will allow for is for the municipality to move through its process and do the work through the official plan update at a local level with less restriction. However, it is going to require council to look at a few other questions related to, say for example, when you're getting into settlement expansions or when you're talking about employment areas and expansion of employment areas, also along with conversion of employment lands to residential. So I think what it does, it definitely provides for more flexibility, but I think the end result will be more questions for council as to how to deal with some of those, some of the changes and revisions that will provide that flexibility.
Follow on?
Thank you. And Director Spagnol, is this, I'm not remembering where I saw it, but is it in this letter that talked about the council responsibilities being changed regarding planning? Was that included in this letter, or was that a different report that I read?
Director Spagnol?
Thank you.
Through Mayor Allen, to Councillor Moore, I think that is a different letter. This one here speaks to growth plan changes, changes to the Planning Act, changes with respect to development charges. I believe that there was another letter that was sent with respect to slowing down or possible reconsideration of official plan reviews and planning work as a result of restructuring. So I think that was a separate letter.
Thank you.
Okay. Can I have a mover and a seconder with respect to the correspondence? Deputy Mayor Coghlan, Councillor Cabral. That the items listed herein be received for information. The MVCA board meeting highlights April 26, letter from MVCA, re-provincial funding cuts and legislative changes for conservation authorities, MVCA conservation update for April, Severn Sound Environmental Association 219 first quarter report, and the letter from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Re-Ontario Housing Supply Action Plan. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to item 8, committee recommendations. This looks at the approval recommendation of the Finance and Audit Committee. And in 8.1 through 8.8, we have extensive information relating to the Springwater year-end audited financial statements, tax base operating surplus, statement of development charge, and cash in lieu of parkland reserve funds, draft investment policy, one investment program, and the first quarter 2019 results, all of which were reviewed in detail by the Audit and Finance Committee in its meeting last week, resulting in these recommendations to Council for these items. So I'll ask Director Schmidt to come up, please, or stay there, wherever he wants, to provide an overview of each of these, and then if there are questions or if any councillor desire to have an item pulled for further discussion, we can do so thereafter. Director Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So I'll start off maybe individually. So 8.2 really contemplates or discusses the management letter that the auditors are responsible to provide to council each year on findings that they may have found during the audit. And in the management letter that you see before you this evening, there's essentially no real concerns. The presentation was conducted by our external auditors at the Finance and Audit Committee. There was a detailed presentation which is on this evening's agenda. I wasn't planning on going through that, but if there's questions from members of council, I'd be happy to answer those. So that presentation was conducted by our external auditors. There were questions from the Finance and Audit Committee members. And in addition to that, there's the draft financial statements for council's consideration this evening. With all of that said, I would like to direct to council's attention to page 2 of the auditor's presentation and page 4 of the financial statements. Essentially, this is the area entitled the Independent Auditor's Report, and simply that it states that the consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the township and its local boards as of December 31st, 2018. So what does that mean to you? Some of you may not mean much, but from a financial perspective, it essentially means that we have a clean audit opinion. So every year when we do the audit, this is the ultimate goal. So I would like to thank all staff as well as my colleagues around the table for assisting us in making sure that we were able to achieve this clean audit opinion, as well as direction from council throughout the year to assist us in achieving this. So with that, that's really all I had for item 8.2, unless council members had specific questions.
If there are any questions with respect to 8.2, feel free to pose them. Otherwise, continue, Director Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So item 8.3, really item 8.3 gets into a little bit more detail of what was presented in 8.2. So the 8.2 really is more of a accounting requirement, if you will. 8.3 is more about, from an operations standpoint, how did the township perform? So they do go hand in hand. So essentially in 2018, it resulted in a tax-based operating surplus of just over $644,000 for the township, which is largely due to additional taxation revenue, so supplementary taxes, as well as some salary and benefit gapping, operational savings throughout the township, including a surplus in library operations, as well as some land sale transactions. In 2018, the township sold 2 parcels of land, in which the net proceeds on the sale of these properties equated to approximately $61,423. So with that, staff is recommending that this amount of the surplus be transferred to the land acquisition reserve to be utilized in future years to purchase land for the township purposes, should land be required. With respect to the 2018 library operating budget, they generated a net surplus in the amount of $42,846. And that's mainly as a result of higher than originally planned revenues, so fine revenues, donations, and fundraising, as well as savings and expenses, mostly noted in salaries and utilities. At the April 16, 2019 Springwater Public Library Board meeting, they passed a motion stating that the Springwater Township Public Library Board recommends that the surplus from the 2018 budget be put into the Library Capital Discretionary Reserve Fund to be accessed at a later date as needed. And then finally, the balance of the 2018 tax-based operating surplus, again, is largely as a result of additional taxation revenue, and staff is recommending that the balance of the 2008 tax-based operating surplus, namely $540,000 and 540,019, be allocated towards reducing the township's unfunded capital. The Finance and Audit Committee Advisory Committee was presented with 2 options at the meeting on May 8th, in which are included in the staff report that you have this evening. The committee is recommending to council option A, which essentially is that the 2018 tax-based operating surplus be allocated as follows. A, $61,423 to the Land Acquisition Reserve, $42,846 to the Library Capital Discretionary Reserve Fund, and $540,019 to reduce the township's unfunded capital. And just further, as of December 31st, 2018, the township's unfunded capital equated to $3.9 million, of which $1.7 million is to be collected via development charges and $2.2 to be funded via taxation. So, should council approve the allocation of these funds as presented tonight, the amount of debt required to be issued in 2019 would be reduced from 2.2 to approximately $1.7 million. So with that, I will again open it or pass it back to you, Mr. Mayor, for any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Director. Any questions with respect to this item? Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor. And further discussion I had with Director earlier today, that given the unknown with the provincial government in relation to their plans to reduce development charges, I was concerned that maybe we should be considered other options. And I'd just like the Director to confirm our conversation that this would still be the best route to go, option A, even if there is a reduction in what we're allowed to collect in the way of development charges.
Director Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to members of council. So yes, there was a conversation with Councillor Hannah this evening before council. Essentially, my comments to him were that that is an option, is to use those funds and put them into a rainy day reserve, if you will. However, my comment to him was, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the whole change in development charges is still somewhat up in the air. We don't know exactly what those impacts are going to exactly be for the township. Myself and the Director of Planning had a discussion with our consultant on Monday of this week. I am participating in a workshop next Friday where Gary Scanlon from Watson's will be presenting to the Simcoe County Treasurers Group. So once I have further information, I can report back to council as to what those impacts will potentially be. So at this stage, again, it's up to council whether they choose to use the 540 to put in a rainy day. I would suggest that it be utilized to reduce our debt. Let's get rid of or lower the debt that the township has today, and that will actually create room in the future so that debt, principal and interest payments that we already have in our operating budget on an annual basis, we could use those funds to support any additional funds that may be required from development charges or any other potential impacts that the township could have over the next number of months through legislation or changes in legislation.
Thank you, Director, and that is what we as the Finance and Audit Committee, after deliberating and debating, agreed on. And so are there any other questions with respect to this point? Or we move on to 8.4.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, 8.4 and 8.5 are somewhat similar and related in that essentially 8.4 is a statement on specifically development charges and cash in lieu of parkland reserve funds. This is an annual statement that's required as per the Development Charges Act and the Planning Act. Simply shows the ins and outs of DCs and cash in lieu of parkland that's being collected in the year and has been allocated to specific projects throughout the year. This 8.4 is, I am required to remit this report to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So it's simply an annual reporting, one of our many annual reporting requirements that we are required to submit to the province. So 8.5 again includes development charges as well as all of our other reserve and reserve funds, so water, wastewater, as well as some of our other discretionary reserve funds and our other operating and capital reserves. Again, it's simply a continuity schedule that we maintain throughout the year and we present to council on an annual basis to, again, there's been some discussion tonight about accountability and transparency. We also want to make sure that the public as well as council and staff are aware of what funds are in each reserve and make sure that council's aware how those funds are being used. At the end of December 2018, the township does have reserve and reserve funds in the amount of approximately $27.4 million. So I'll leave it at that unless there's questions.
Any questions on 8.4 or 8.5? Good. Keep rolling. 8.6.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So 8.6 is a draft investment policy, and essentially staff is requesting council approve the draft investment policy that you see before you tonight. The draft investment policy is consistent and comparable with other Ontario municipal investment policies. In addition, is for the most part, what's included in it is based or prescribed by Ontario Regulation 438/97. So when it comes to investments, we can invest, but they're very prescriptive. And so this policy is essentially in line with that OREG. Further to that, in order for the township to potentially move forward with the one investment program and or any other investment mechanisms outside of our current financial institution, it's, in my opinion, prudent that the township have an updated investment policy. I'll be honest with you, I've looked, I can't find an investment policy that the township has, or at least has come to council. And if there is, I apologize, but with that said, here's an updated one, which I think is more in line with what's prescribed in the OREG, And so staff is asking for council's consideration to adopt this policy this evening.
It certainly is an area that you have recognized and we have recognized needs to be shored up and improved. I believe our interest and investment income was $83,000 over plan or $84,000 over plan last year, and there's room to increase that with responsible, better investing of our excess funds. Any questions from council with respect to this item? Okay, proceeding to the next one, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the next item, agenda item 8.7, discusses the One Investment Program. So again, to the Mayor's comments, staff would like the opportunity to explore the use of the One Investment Program and/or potentially others for a portion of the township's investment portfolio. As the Mayor mentioned, our current investment portfolio, for the most part, consists of a mix of cash and short and long-term GIC investments. So, while those investments are safe and less risky, they're often very low return in the current rate environment that we have. So, the township's current banking arrangement provides for daily interest savings of prime, so prime being 3.95% right now, less 1.69%, whereas the One Investment, so for an example, the One Investment's high interest savings account is currently prime less 1.535%, so a difference of 15.5 basis points. So again, even if we didn't do anything with some of our idle cash and just put it in the high interest savings account in the one fund, we'd still be making a little bit more money. Not a ton, but we'd still be making more money. I'm not suggesting that would be the only thing we do, but I think it's important that we take a look at the One Investment Program. It is a municipal investment pool, which provides access to a wider range of investment products and has the potential for increasing our investment returns. And it is well diversified, and the risk is managed. So with that, again, in order to participate in the One Investment Program, the municipality is required to pass a bylaw, which I believe is on the agenda this evening, as well as we're seeking authorization to enter into an agency agreement that, again, is on the agenda this evening. So with that, I'll leave it for any questions that council may have.
Any questions on 8.7? Okay, and finally 8.8, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So finally, this last report here is simply for maybe some newer members of council. We try to report on a quarterly basis to members of council and the public on the status of our annual budget. So this is simply a status update as of March 31st of this year. The report essentially is stating that at this stage, the township is tracking about 86,000 better than originally planned. And I think there's some comments made there about the capital program. Obviously, with the budget being approved February 20th, I believe it was, and the report being at the end of March. Obviously, dollars for capital are not high at this time, but that doesn't mean that staff hasn't been spending a lot of time on trying to get projects to tender and to RFP and try to award. And you have actually seen some of those awards over the last number of council meetings. So although the dollars haven't been spent, there is lots of work that's been done. So again, I will leave it at that unless there's questions from council.
Any questions on this matter? Councillor Ritchie.
I just want an overall comment of these here to compliment the Director of Finance and his staff for the great work that's been done and continue to be done as well. So thank you very much for your input into all of this. Thank you.
I'd just like to reiterate that. Thanking management, staff, senior staff, and staff to being very nimble this year. There were a lot of variables on the revenue side, a lot of variables on the expense side, and it's always a moving target. So to be able to balance that, be nimble, react quickly, and come up with a surplus that we had is very commendable. So good work. Councillor Ritchie?
Word in the street, rates are coming down, so lock in, according to my friends.
Okay, so we need a mover and a seconder. The recommendations from the Finance and Audit Committee contained in items 8.2 through 8.8 be approved as presented. Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Cabral. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you again. Okay, moving on to 9.1, enforcement of cannabis. We have a report that states two options. From reading the report, any comments or questions or leanings towards an option, Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just a couple of clarifying points with respect to what the smoke-free Ontario legislation actually covers. When I'm looking at this on page 3, where it says potential bylaw regulation, it speaks to schools, retail and business establishments, and Smoke-Free Ontario specifically covers those areas as well, so it's not something that would be in addition to. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. And my other thought on this would be that the only thing that's really changed is the cannabis aspect. And of course, we had our vote on that and brought it into being here as far as brick and mortar location is going to be concerned at some point in the future. I think I'd be leaning towards the status quo and having it enforced the way it presently is enforced. The provincial government, they added a few other locations when it came to cannabis and the vaping as well, and I think it's adequate. That's just my thoughts on it.
So that's option 2? Yeah. Any other comments? Councillor Hanna?
Option 2, and I could give a whole bunch of reasons why if we need to.
Okay, let's have a mover and seconder to get this on the table with option 2. Councillor Chapman, Councillor Moore, that the report from the Senior Municipal Law Enforcement Officer regarding enforcement cannabis report dated May 15th be received, and that option 2, continue to utilize provincial legislation Smoke-Free Ontario Act 217 as guiding regulations for the enforcement of cannabis-related issues, which is to be enforced by tobacco enforcement officers at the health unit. Any further discussion on this? Councillor Cabral.
Just actually a question. With respect to the Smoke-Free Ontario, there are signs that are applicable given the specific areas to be posted, and I'm wondering if we have access to those signs and if we're intending to put them up ourselves.
CAO Brindley? Or Director Spack? Okay. Director Belcourt.
Mr. Belcourt.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Cabral. Yes, we've been provided with signs a couple of years ago, and there's 2 at every playground facility, 2 at every sporting facility, and at any other facility where they're required.
Okay, all those in favor of option 2? Carried. Moving on to action reports, item 10. We have action reports 10.2 through 10.6. Any comments or desires to pull any of these for amendments to the recommendations or questions with respect to these? Councillor Hanna?
10.2, 10.3. That's all for now, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Councillor Cabral?
10.6, but just a question. I don't know if we need to pull it.
Councillor Hanna, was yours just questions?
Thank you. If I may, I have to direct my questions through you, Mayor, to our fire chief, who's people at home can't see, but he's happily sitting at the back of the room waiting for my questions.
He's moving into view.
Thank you. Chief, I'm looking at your report for the pumper/tanker, and I just have a number of questions, if you don't mind, please. And is it a pumper or a tanker, I guess, is my first question.
Chief Cavey?
Thank you, Worship, through to Councillor Hanna. So basically it is a pumper, but it has a bigger water tank than you would typically find on a pumper. Therefore, it is both a pumper and a tanker. So for the sake of understanding, we just call it a pumper tanker.
Thank you, if I may continue. So I'm going back to a couple of years ago, we had a request for a vehicle to transport staff, or fire personnel, and instead of going with a particular vehicle that was tailored just to that one function, you were very successful in getting a pumper that was a demo, and I believe it was from Quebec, and you got an excellent price on it. And I'm just wondering if there's only 2 proponents here, and I think we normally get 4, but I'm not positive on that. I'm just wondering why there's only 2, and is the one from Quebec where you got the great deal before included?
Chief Gervais?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor Hannah. Excellent questions. So rather like the truck that you're thinking of, there was no demonstrator available, which is what we got the last time with that truck that went to Elmvale. It's essentially the same truck, just slightly bigger, and it is indeed manufactured by Pierce, the cab and chassis in the United States, and then it's shipped across to its partner Maxi Metal in Quebec, where the body and the pump and everything is put together. With regards to the amount of submissions received, we had a number of companies, typically there are some bigger companies in both the US and Canada that we would have expected to bid. However, the feedback we got from them was we would love to bid, but the biggest firefighter show in North America, FDIC in Indianapolis, was being held that week, and they were unable to actually get the drawings off the table. And thought that, there could be another couple of months. So they actually withdrew and chose not to submit a bid. So that's why you have these 2 bids in front of you today.
Thank you. So if I may continue, so if we're not in a big rush for this truck, because I understand it sometimes takes a year for them to get developed and put together and so on, could we wait until these other proponents were available to get a price from them?
Chief Gervais?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor Hannah, so absolutely you could wait. We're at the 20-year mark now. We would theoretically cross into the 21st year. Even if we were to place the order for this truck today, we don't see it getting produced and actually to us until June of next year. Your point is very well taken, but unfortunately the majority of those other proponents are buying or would be providing a Spartan cab and chassis, which is actually more expensive, and that's actually reflected in the 2 bids you have in front of you today. So you'll see one is about $26,500 more expensive than the other, and I would expect that if we went out to RFP again, that basically you would indeed see those people bid, but they would be more expensive than the ones you have in front of you today.
CEO Brindley? Oh, Director Schmidt.
I was waiting to go there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just further to the Chief's comments and to maybe also respond to Councillor Hannah's comments, I would caution about waiting. This has gone out to a public tender, and essentially you have 2 companies that have bid and are compliant. And so in order for us to essentially cancel this, we would have to come up with justification as to why we're not awarding to the lowest bidder, and potentially be subject to litigation. It is, again, it has been out to the public. We typically, for the most part, we've been complying with CFTA requirements and CETA requirements, which are different trade agreements. Typically, we do have these tenders out to market for a minimum of 35 days. People that do bid with the township know where we place our bidding opportunities. So again, I understand what you're suggesting, but I would just caution that because we've already gone out to market, we would have to come up with justifications and notify these individuals as to why we're not awarding to one of them.
Follow on?
Thank you. I appreciate the elimination. I just have to ask the question because that's important to me. And thank you, Chief. I just want to confirm this is similar to the other pumper that we bought. It holds a crew of 4 or 5, 6. Excellent. And hopefully you can get a better price and find a good demo. So thank you.
10.3, Councillor Hannah, did you want that?
Oh, sorry. That's the Barrie North Winter Clubhouse. They want to get rid of the current trailer they have and get a larger one. So with discussions with Mr. Belcourt, our Director of Parks and Rec, we have the pavilion there with no washroom facilities. If we want to use it for I'm sorry, I call them hootenannies, because I don't know what else you call them when they all get together and play music and dance and stuff, but anyway, if we want to do something like that, we have to provide washrooms and so on. In order to be able to do that, my suggestion was that possibly we could look with the Barrie North Winter Tennis Club to see if there was any way we could acquire the current smaller trailer that they want to get rid of, move it to a location that would be suitable for us to provide washrooms and change room, and also hook it into the current septic system, and provide them with a charitable donation receipt for whatever they believe the value of it is. And basically, I don't want to say we're going to get it for free, but that's what it would be. And I just think that's something that maybe Mr. Belcourt and his negotiating skills could look into it for us, if council agrees.
Director Belcourt.
Thank you, Worship, through the council. Yes, Councillor Hanna and I had this discussion this afternoon, and Mr. Weller from Barrie North Winter Tennis actually asked that similar question to me a while ago through just a general conversation if the township would be interested in it. I didn't pursue it at the time because I wasn't sure which way we were heading, but it's definitely something that's worth pursuing if we can get it for a reasonable rate, such as zero. It would require some modifications to the interior and to make it accessible and to provide an accessible washroom within the existing building, but it is extremely doable. And if council so desires, I'd be willing to go back to Barrie North Winter Tennis with that and discuss that with them.
What would be, with the size of that unit, what would be possible to contain within the unit? A change room, an accessible washroom, anything else? Any kitchen facilities, or is it too small?
I think we could have it's a similar size building to what the Phelpston Rink House is right now. With reconfiguring the inside of it, right now it has separated washrooms. It's an electrical room that wouldn't be required for just a change room building, washroom building. I believe we could accommodate washrooms, change area, and similar setup to Phelpston with the kitchen counters and sinks that were installed to provide a small food prep area too that could be used and associated with events at the Mitters Pavilion.
And then a separate storage facility would have to be built, is that correct?
We could look at additional storage space on the end of the facility. We did construct a fairly good size utility building off the northwest corner of the pavilion that's being utilized for storage as well. But it would be a good, if the facility or the structure is still sound, it would be a good way to proceed at a much lower cost than having to build from scratch.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you. I would just like to confirm, is a charitable donation receipt something that's applicable for this?
Director Belcourt or Schmidt? Director Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Hanna. I think it's something that we could definitely look into, the optics or the administration of how we do that. We would have to discuss to make sure we're in line, but something that I think we could possibly explore.
So what we'll do, we might be looking at an amendment on this one, so we'll pull this one and come back to it. Next is 10.5, and Councillor Moore, please.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Director Coleman. We may have discussed this at budget time, but it was a lot at budget time. And since then, I've had the opportunity to review a couple of newspaper articles and seen some reports come out of local cities and municipalities about reusing winter sand. We may have discussed it, but what I'm reading is that engineers are finding the sand size is not losing its sharpness, which may have been thought to have happened so other municipalities were not pursuing reusing or recycling the sand. City of Barrie initially thought they would save about $500,000. This year they've saved $250,000 on their sand budget. I'm wondering why, well, number one, why we're not looking at that, and number two, could we look at that, understanding that this tender's already been sent out, but could we look at that for next year? Thank you.
Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you to Councillor Moore. I don't think we discussed it at this budget time, but I believe we discussed it briefly last year when we awarded the sand tender. And I did get the results from Barrie and what they did and what it cost them, and I broke it down. At that time, I compared it to what we do. And I can dig that back up and maybe email that to all members of council. What Barrie ran into was their largest cost was the disposal fee. Once the sand was swept off the road, they had to pay to dispose of it. We take it to our pits and reuse it in our pits. So that was the significant difference that they were experiencing that we don't. At the end of the day, the numbers came down it was still less expensive for us to not recycle the sand by using the process that they were. But I can dig up those facts from last year and email them to all members of council for further information.
Follow on?
Thank you. I think what I'd like to see are the numbers, the comparison numbers, if you have them available, what savings or not, so how much more expensive it would be. But I think that in recycling, it's a greener approach. So I think that if the numbers are, even if they're equal, I would like to see us have a bit of a greener approach anyway, and recycle. So, thank you.
Do you want to respond to that, or is, if not, Deputy Mayor Coughlin has a point to make. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you, and further to Councillor Moore's comments, I'm not sure what Barrie does with their sand, but if we have capacity in our pits to repurpose their sand, maybe we should talk to them about providing them with a venue, and we will happily take care of that for them.
Okay, so we'll go ahead with this item as it is, and if we want to do an IFC with respect to that study, we could do a item for future consideration. 10.6, Councillor Cabral?
Actually, this is for Director Coleman, but I'm actually looking for a bit of clarification here. When I was reviewing this, it looked like the bids were like drastically different. Like one's $1 million, the other one's 8 and change. And I just wanted to be sure that when I'm reading this, it looks like this particular company that did the work in 2018 and apparently did quite a satisfactory job. It's for not only inspecting them with closed circuit TV, but also doing the in situ repairs with the epoxy and the liners wherever they come across it where it's needed. That's my first question. Is that the understanding?
Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you to Councillor Cabral. That's correct. What they do is, well, last year we videoed all of the sanitary sewers north of Queen Street in Elmvale. They came back with a list of deficiencies prioritized, and we repaired those until we hit the budget number. So this year the plan is to video all the sanitary sewers south of Queen Street in Elmvale, and then we'll proceed with the same. They will come back with their list of deficiencies prioritized, and we will work on those and again until we run out of budget money.
Councillor Cabral, follow on.
Thanks very much. That certainly cleared it up for me. So if I understand correctly, they identified them, and then they're going to repair those ones this year under this particular contract, and also undertake to survey the ones at the south end and identify the ones that need attention again and and then they'll be on the plate for next year, I would take it then, eh?
Director
Is
Coleman?
that correct?
No, what they videoed last year, was repaired last year. And then what they videoed this year, we will repair with the funds available this year. The long-range, proposed capital budget continues to show money for the Elmvale sewers, so next year we will, reevaluate, probably again, start looking back north of Queen Street, ones that were sort of borderline and didn't need any repairs, we'll review those. Probably continuing on that until we see a point where we're not requiring that, and certainly as the sanitary sewers in the other ends of the township age, we'll have to start moving the money that way as well.
Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder to deal with action reports 10-2 through 10-6, please. Councillor Cabral and Councillor Chapman. That the action reports item 10-2 through 10-6 be received, that the recommendations contained therein be approved as presented. 10-2, award of the RFP 219-12, read the pumper truck replacement. 10.4, County of Simcoe Economic Development Transition Funding Program, 219 funding allocation proposal. 10.3, Barrie North Winter Tennis Clubhouse. 10.5, 219 PW Winter Sand Tender. 10.6, award of CCTV and in-situ repairs for sanitary and storm sewers, with the exception of item 10.3 being dealt with separately. All those in favor? Carried. I mover and a seconder for the Barrie North Winter Tennis Clubhouse, please. Councillor Hanna and Councillor Moore. That the report from the Director of Recreation, Parks and Properties regarding the Barrie North Winter Tennis Clubhouse dated May 15, 2019 be received, and that the Barrie North Winter Tennis be authorized to pursue the construction of a new and larger clubhouse at Doran Park, and that the lease agreement with the Barrie North Winter Tennis be amended to reflect the end-of-term value of the clubhouse is to be negotiated at the end of term, and should a value not be mutually agreed upon, BNWT shall be responsible for the removal of the clubhouse trailer from the site as per the current agreement. All those in favor? Any discussion with respect to that? Councillor Hanna?
I'm sorry, but I thought maybe we were giving some direction to staff to try to pursue an option to acquire the existing structure that's there.
Okay, so we have an amendment to the motion, and I need a mover and a seconder, so Councillor Hanna and Deputy Mayor Coughlin, that the motion now before council be amended as follows, adding that the staff explore the option of purchasing the existing clubhouse and compare this to other options. Any questions, discussion? All those in favor? Carried. And then, do I need to read that again? No. So the main motion is amendment, then we're voting on that. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Next, we move to item 11.1, information reports. Any questions with respect to these reports, or have any of these pulled? Councillor Hanna?
Just with the fire monthly report, I have a couple questions.
Go ahead, please.
I'll wait for the chief to grab his hot seat over there. I don't know if the clerk wants to bring the report up or not, but I'm looking at the monthly report, and I'm looking at down the left side of the column, it says 19-130, and it's a burn without permit complaint, and I think probably why I got confused is I always see those as being non-emergent responses when it's just a burn without a permit. But in fairness to our fire service, it shows that the response time was 28 minutes and 40 seconds, but it was never found. The burn complaint, the way I read this, if it was never found, I don't think it's fair to our fire service to indicate that it took them almost a half an hour to find something that didn't exist. And the next one underneath that is 19-131, which is a structure fire that was also never found, and it shows that that one took our fire service response time was 23 minutes and 52 seconds. Again, the same type of scenario that, and it makes it appear as our fire service are not getting to places on time. And my question on this one at 19-131 is if this was a fire structure, was never found, it indicates to me that it didn't happen. So was there any investigation into a false alarm for reporting a fire?
Chief Cavey?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor Hannah. So with regards to the burn complaint 19-130, basically it is a non-emergency call, as you rightly said. So basically we have to wait for 2 officers, as this was an out-of-hours call, to get there. And in this case, they were found to be burning without a permit, and they were dealt with in accordance with the bylaw. With regards to the structure fire, nothing was found. I think the issue with this one wasn't that it took them 23 minutes to get there. It was more along the lines of it was called in by somebody who I think might have been under the influence of intoxicants. And we launched resources at it all over the place, and I think the 911 call shut it off when we said, yep, we absolutely can't find anything. There was absolutely no fire of any kind in the area, and being the efficient fire service that we are, because it was called in from Highway 26, we actually investigated all roads in the area to rule anything out.
Follow on?
Thank you. Again, I just want to make sure it doesn't reflect badly on our fire service, showing that it's close to half an hour to respond to a couple of calls. My last question, if I could please, is on the last page. It talks about monthly activities and public sessions. I gotta make sure I find it myself. So on the right-hand side of that page there, it talks about public education sessions. It shows the third line down, it shows 9, number of persons attending 363. I'm just curious if that is the public sessions, and the next one underneath is 11 and 478. Is that based on the fact that this was at the Maple Syrup Festival, and people maybe stopped by a booth, and that's why we get the high number of persons in attendance, where I see that as a education session, something you would hold here at this building and have maybe 50 people at. So I'm just looking for clarification there, please.
Chief Cavey?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor Hannah. Councillor, you and we think alike. That would not include anybody that stopped off at the Elmvale Maple Syrup booth. We don't record those figures for the purposes of the monthly fire report. The Fire Prevention Officer, District Chief Jeff Corvo, runs an excellent Ask Sparky program, which is becoming increasingly popular throughout the school system in our area. And that number reflects, I believe, 1 fire extinguisher education session, and the rest were all Ask Sparky in local classrooms, where they get some valuable fire prevention advice and, of course, get to meet Sparky.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to the chief. I've looked at these reports now several times, and what I'd really like to see, I don't know how difficult it is for you to do, but I'd like another column that clearly states how much time you spend at a call. I understand military time, or this type of clock, but I'm not sure that everybody does. So what I'd like to see is a third column beside the cleared scene that says 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes. I'd like to know exactly, at a glance, how quick you are in and out of a scene. Is that doable?
Chief
Thank
Cavey?
you.
Thank you, Worship. Absolutely doable. Just adds another layer of work, but I'll get the Deputy Chief to insert that column. the earliest possible opportunity. And I think what will probably reflect is because different units will clear at different times, it'll just be the total time on scene, not for individual trucks, but out of all the trucks, who stayed the longest, if that works for you.
Sure, that's fine. That's fine. It's just I can at a glance tell that you've been in and out in some of these calls really quickly, and I just want other folks to be able to see how quick that is, and it's not a bad thing or a good thing. I just want to be able to see it quickly. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder to that the report items listed herein be received for information? Councillor Cabral, Deputy Mayor Coughlin, all those in favor? Carried. Verbal reports. Director Spagnell, anything with respect to OP update or economic development?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I'd just like to report that the Planning Development Advisory Committee met on May 6th to kick off that initiative, and I think it was a very productive meeting to go over the documents that they'll be reviewing and hopefully providing comments with respect to the official plan review and economic development strategy. Staff is also working towards setting a date for the Agricultural Advisory Committee, who will also have the same role to provide some comment on the official plan review process. So that's just the update as far as things go with respect to the official plan.
Thank you. 12.3 county update, Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Specifically to the regional government review, county did approve both the regional government review task force position framework, and I did make copies for council. Actually, sorry, Karen made copies for council. These positions were approved by council on Tuesday, so both groups met, and this is now going to be moved on to Minister Clark. From that, I guess during the items for future consideration, I think that as a council of Springwater, we need to have a discussion about a possibility of us having a position also on the regional government review. At this point, once these letters have been sent, the task force are no longer, I shouldn't say they're disabled or dissembled, but they're not required to meet at this point. So I guess now, unless we decide to make our position from Springwater known, it's now the waiting game. And I think that's where there's no more work to be done other than continue to communicate with residents and have residents make sure that residents do respond to the portal that is available. But aside from that, I think all the work has been done at the county level anyway.
Okay, thank you. Any item, we do have any notices of motion? Oh, sorry, municipal update. I missed that. Municipal updates. Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I just wanted to say that the BIA is going to be hosting their music at Gateway Park on Saturdays, I think commencing June the 28th. I might not be right on the money for that date. And the only dates I think that they're going to exclude are the dates where they have other activities going on, which brings me to the Sci-Fi Festival, Street Festival, which is taking place on July the 20th, 2019 this year. So something to look forward to. And last but certainly not least, we had a grand opening at the Red Brick Kitchen Design Center on Queen Street West there, and on hand on Saturday morning was Mayor Don Allen to cut the ribbon, and it was pretty nice there. They had some traffic. It wasn't as busy as we kind of thought it might have been, but I'm sure they had other people popping in as the day wore on. Thank you.
Just a plug for that. That's a great store for kitchen redesign, kitchen updates. They've got lots of good ideas there, so it's a great new business in Elmville. All right, moving on to Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you, Tuesday or next week is National Public Works Week.
Yes.
And we've been invited, so I didn't know if Director Coleman wanted to speak to that or if council wanted to speak to that.
Yes, Director Coleman, I plan to attend.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Yes, as Deputy Mayor Coughlin mentioned, next week is National Public Works Week. We've reached out to the schools but haven't had a lot of feedback this year, so we're hoping to certainly expand next year. So for this year, we've planned, the morning will be just public works staff. We're going to have our own rodeo and some time together to celebrate ourselves. And then in the afternoon, between 1 and 3, we've opened it up for council and staff to attend. We have, we'll have a snowplow suited up, a sidewalk plow. I believe we'll have the backhoe, so staff and council can practice moving a ball around as opposed to digging a hole. And we have a couple of community partners that will also have some equipment available that for staff and council to look at.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Also tomorrow is the Skills Trades Expo at the Elmville Arena. Staff has been working diligently to get the event put together. It is an absolutely incredible interactive event for anybody of all ages. My kids have been going since it's opened and they absolutely love it, and I know our high school students enjoy it as well. So that's tomorrow, open to the public in the evening at the Elmville Arena. And lastly, just to update council, on May 3rd, I attended the, don't want to get it wrong, the OAFC conference, which is the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs, I believe. Head nod, thank you. So there was a portion of it open to municipal elected officials, which was going to give us the opportunity to put on bunker gear and actually participate in fire suppression. Simulated fire suppression, I was hoping. However, that was canceled, but they did extend an invitation to the trade show, so I did attend the trade show, and Fire Deputy Chief French and Training Officer Truax were kind enough to walk me or be my escort through the trade show, and there was a lot of, outside was all the ladder trucks, and inside was a lot of shiny lights and shininess happening, but I want to say the demonstrations that they put on and the equipment that they have and just how the equipment is transferring, I will say that the price tags attached to everything was definitely a massive shock to me. I was joking with them that we should do a Price is Right for council just to really understand the value of everything that they have and what they are required to have. But yeah, it was an eye-opener, and I was really happy that I could attend, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Okay, moving on to 13.1, any notices of motion? Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn, and I don't know about the timing on this or even if there's an appetite for council, but I do feel that Springwater should have a position on the regional governance review. And I think that in collaboration with council, we could direct staff to have this paper and position put together.
Comments? Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, to Deputy Mayor Coughlin. I think it's really important that we have representation there, that we have a voice, and I think each municipality is unique, so I think that voice would be able to lend itself to what we provide here and what a great job everybody does. I think it's imperative that we have somebody there. Thanks.
I do just remind that I think it's a good idea. CEO Brindley and myself did have the interviews with the consultants for half an hour a couple of months ago, and but it'd be a good idea to follow up with some sort of further communication of a Springwater perspective. Clerk Chaparral?
Thank you. Might I suggest that that be an item for future consideration? Otherwise, it would only be brought forward for debate and for consideration at the next meeting. So if you propose this as an item for future consideration, it could be voted on tonight and commenced should it be approved.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn. And the deadline's the 21st, is that correct? Yeah. So I don't know how, if we can put your watch away.
CEO Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through to the Deputy Mayor. And I'll hopefully get some advice from the clerk. What I can do is I can prepare essentially what the mayor and I presented to the provincial advisors. and maybe seek some input from council, but my concern is I don't want it to be a vote. I don't want, but what I could do is very quickly put that together, but my concern is to get council together as a group before the 21st would be a challenge. So I'm suggesting that perhaps I can put a guidance document together and then get some input, if that's council's will. My concern is based on the date we have today, it's less than a week to actually, for us to meet again on this, and that's the challenge, unless council so wishes that, that we have a date, so.
I think we can turn it around by you crafting something and then distributing it and getting comments in. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you, I do want to be clear that I understand that we're asking this to be done in 3 days. We have 2 days left in this working week. Monday's a holiday, and it's due Tuesday. So if this is not something that can be done, I am willing to work as much as I can on it. There are other municipalities that have provided letters, and I do have access to those, and it's a template. I mean, our issues are unique, but I think that there is regional issues as well. But I do feel that if there is an opportunity for us to put something in writing from this council, there will not be an opportunity to have it voted on, and I get the optics of this, so I don't know how through staff or through the clerk if we've just missed the vote on it.
CEO Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through the Deputy Mayor. I don't think we've missed the boat because we have commented, but I do appreciate the comments. What I can do is, I've looked at my schedule tomorrow. I can have something, I won't guarantee at 4:30 tomorrow, but I can put something together for council tomorrow. And then I'll ask over the weekend that you provide me comments, and then I could probably have something available for Tuesday.
Okay, Councillor Cabral?
Just a comment on that, because the timeline, is it not possible, or is it possible? We're all entitled to make our own comments on this. Is it possible that CAO Brindley might be able to put something together and send it out to us when we're happy with it? I don't think there's anything wrong with us sending it individually as a member of council, as a Ward 1 councillor, as the deputy mayor, as the mayor. I mean, that's one way for us to get it in there collectively, without us having to put anybody under the gun and have another meeting.
Thoughts on that, CEO Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can do both. One is, I think a force of numbers is always good as well. So if a number of councillors want to convey a similar message, it probably helps. But at the same time, at least to assist council, I will put something together tomorrow.
Okay, good. Let's do that then. All right. So items for future consideration, we have Councillor Moore, and we need a seconder of Councillor Moore's. This is with respect to the winter sand study. A seconder, Councillor Chapman. That item for future consideration presented by Councillor Moore, requesting a complete study and study research regarding the use of winter sand for streets versus recycled sand reused, including financial implications and environmental impact. Be hereby approved. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you, I guess to Councillor Moore, I thought that what I had heard was that there is a report already. We're not redoing any work. We're passing along the information that we had, and then we can use that to move forward, or is this new work that's commencing?
Councillor Moore?
Sorry, through you, Mayor Allen, I think what Director Coleman said was she needed to put some new numbers together, that she didn't have more current information. Is that correct?
Director Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I did have the numbers from the City of Barrie when they originally did it. I don't know what their costs would be now. I can only assume that they're the same, or the cost of inflation, and that would be probably comparable to the cost of the sand that the new tender. So they should be comparable. What I mentioned is I could dig up the email that I had and forward it, but I think that Councillor Moore expanded on that. So.
Further discussion with respect to this?
So what I'm really looking for then is current information and current research to expenditures for the township versus savings for the township, and if those numbers are equal, what the environmental impact then is using the recycled sand. So,
Can I replace complete study to current research regarding?
yes. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Any other items for future consideration? Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Just the discussion that we just had about the regional review position paper.
Yes.
I'll just craft something here. Okay, well, that's been crafted. Councillor Hannah?
Just while the clerk was drafting it, rather than waste their time, I wanted to make a comment.
Go ahead and make a comment.
We talked about economic development, and at 10.4, there was economic development funds for transition funds from the county. And we always talk about economic development. I'm just pointing out to council, not that you don't already know this, but we have Springwater Park here in Springwater, provincial park. It's an untapped resource in my view. The Liberal government sort of closed it up. It's now First Nations and Ministry of Natural Resources that look after it. And I'm just suggesting that anytime there's an opportunity through economic development to try to use that as attracting whatever to our township, it would be something that we could try to work on. I think it would be an excellent idea.
So are you proposing an item for future consideration with respect to that?
Not really. I just was using up airtime because I think it's just something that we need to keep in mind.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Councillor Cabral.
I actually wasn't going to just use up airline, but thank you, Mayor Allen. I just wanted to clarify that to the CAO Brindley, I wasn't suggesting that we write individual ones. I was actually suggesting that if you drafted one up and we had comments, I'd be more than happy to forward collectively the one that he is drafted up with my name attached to it. That's kind of what I was saying.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Coughlin and seconded by Councillor Chapman, that staff draft a letter providing the township's position regarding the regional government review, and that the draft letter be circulated to council for comments. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Moving on to bylaws, can I have a mover and a seconder for bylaws, please? Councillor Cabral, Deputy Mayor Coughlin, that the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. That's 21947, read the 219 levy and tax rates, 21948, agreement with One Investment Program, and 5000-288 regarding ZB 215-017, PGC Investments, Inc. All those in favor? Carried. And a mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw. Councillor Moore, Councillor Chapman, that bylaw 21949 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on May 15, 2019, listed herein, be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. And the adjournment bylaw, Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Cabral. Regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 8:56 p.m. to meet again in regular meeting on June 5, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. in Council Chambers, Admin Center in Minnesing. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, and hopefully the Raptors are winning.